What is the scariest, creepiest thing that has happened to you when you were home alone? It was raining pretty hard one night, and I was about to go to bed. Our dog decided to start going nuts, barking at the corner of the family room. We had just moved in, so there wasn't anything in there, but she just kept constantly barking at nothing. I tried to pull her away, but she wasn't having any of it. She started showing her teeth and snarling, which she never does. I figured there must be an animal outside, so I turned on the deck lights, deck is off the family room, and peer outside. Nope, nothing. I wasn't about to go outside because of the rain and I didn't see anything anyway. So I dragged the dog to the bedroom, but she just won't shut up. Finally decide to get my shoes and umbrella on and walk around the house. Found one of my neighbors curled up along the side of the deck, trying to protect himself from the rain. He's disabled and a little slow. He usually goes out for walks in the neighborhood. He got caught in the rain and couldn't find his house. If my dog hadn't gone nuts, he might have been out there all night, and who knows what could have happened. One night, when I was about 12 or 13, my parents were gone for a while, and I was just staying up really late, past midnight, on my desktop computer waiting for them to come home. Like most people, I had been told a million times not to talk to strangers on the internet, but about half my friends list on MSN were people I had never met before. So I was just chatting with a bunch of them. Out of nowhere, one of my online friends had told me exactly what I had been doing the past hour or two. What I was eating, drinking, playing with, when I had gotten up last, things I hadn't mentioned in chat. I instantly got a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. My desktop was set up in front of a big window, so as far as I knew, this person I had been talking to, that was supposed to live in a different country than me, had found my address and been watching me through the window. Turns out, he had somehow hacked into my webcam. I always left it plugged in even though I had been warned not to when I wasn't using it, and had been frequently watching me through it whenever he wanted. It's been 10 years and I still have all the cameras on my devices covered in thick duct tape. Someone scoped out my apartment, charged up my stairs and started banging on the door demanding I open it and talk to her. This chick would not give me a name or what she wanted. Finally threatened to call the cops, and that's when she runs back down my stairs. Dude, let me in, I'm a fairy. I do believe. Pixie dust, cocaine dust. 2 years ago, I get home from my last lecture from university before the start of Christmas break. My family had gone to Scotland for the weekend. I was all alone at home for the weekend. Once I arrived at home, I showered and was getting food ready. After eating, I turned on my PS4, plugged my headset and began playing. However, an hour later, I hear loud thudding from upstairs floor. Rather than being brave and checking upstairs, I ran to close and lock the living room doors to prevent a robber from entering. I hurried to my phone and called the police, who arrived quickly and began searching. After 20 minutes of searching, they found that someone had broken into my house, through my bedroom window. Luckily, no valuables had been taken. I did, however, get a 2-hour lecture from my parents on what precautions to take when home alone. My husband went out of town for his first work trip following the birth of our first child, so it was me, my infant daughter, and dog at home. And I am counting it as alone considering I was the only one awake and verbal in the house at the time. I just put my daughter down for bed and was in the kitchen cleaning up when I suddenly heard our garage door open, something that should not be possible with my husband. And second of 2 garage door openers, literally in another state. I raced to lock the door coming into the house from the garage, and crouched next to it for at least 3 minutes, phone out and dialed to 911. Trying to listen for any sounds of intrusion before cracking the door open just enough to reach my arm through and close the garage again. I did not sleep super well that night, though some of that can be blamed on the nightmare that was my baby's sleep schedule at the time. And had at least 3 more mysterious garage openings overnight in the following week. It turns out that when I'd paired a spare garage door opener the day prior, one of our neighbors was arriving home and just so happened to use their opener at the exact moment I pressed the link button in our garage. It took me an absurd amount of time to make the connection, because they honestly don't go in and out of their house very frequently. In any case, that first instance had me acting out parts of a home intrusion scene in a horror movie. A few years ago, I 24F got home from work around 10 PM while I was living with my parents, and they happened to be away on vacation that week. After cooking myself a late dinner, I went onto the back deck adjacent to the kitchen to grab something I had left out there earlier in the day. A bizarre sound caught my attention, like a dog panting. So of course I searched to see where it was coming from. I looked up to see my neighbor 40SM across the street, standing on his deck buck naked and jerking off. He had been watching me through the window and did not stop when I discovered him. I was at my college boyfriend's house over Christmas break. I was alone downstairs reading. At night. Boyfriend was upstairs, probably studying because he was a law student and always studying. Old house. I was on the couch in the living room, which had 2 big windows. No curtains. My back was to the windows. I heard something stir outside the window behind me, but I froze. Couldn't move. I was hoping my boyfriend would come downstairs because I couldn't call for him. Still frozen. He must have read my mind because he came down soon after. He saw what was going on behind me, yelled at full volume, tore open the front door, and took off running down the street. What he saw was a man jacking off, looking in at me from outside, right against the window. Boyfriend chased him but didn't catch him. I was so freaked out. That's absolutely horrifying, and that must have been a terrible thing to see for your boyfriend as well. Over a year ago, I'd gone to bed with my boyfriend, and after a few minutes I hear my cat jump up on the windowsill behind us and start hissing. She growled and meowed a lot, but never hissed. So, I propped myself up and looked out the window expecting to see another cat. Instead, I saw a man in a ski mask, standing just to the left of the window, not looking in at that moment, but appeared to be examining the window itself. I lowered myself back down and tapped my BF and whispered that there was a man right outside. He sat up very slowly and looked out, then whipped the window open and yelled, "What are you doing?" The man said he was just looking around. To which my BF called BS and tried to jump out of the window, but I had some poles set in to, ironically, discourage a break-in if I left my window cracked. So it was too narrow for him to jump out. My BF sprinted out the front door instead to chase him, but whoever it was got away. He was so upset he escaped. We're not together anymore, but I miss that man every day. Lived in a condo. In the middle of the night, I woke up to hear someone rattling my front doorknob. No one had keys to my condo except me. Then, the door opened up, and I heard someone walking in. I was 100% sure I was being robbed. Fight or flight kicked in, and I flew out of bed and ran toward the front door screaming, "Get out of here," which came out as complete gibberish, as I had been sound asleep about 30 seconds prior. And now had crazy adrenaline pumping through my veins. I was literally jumping around in my underwear screaming and waving my arms, when it dawned on me that the 2 guys standing at my front door looked more scared than I have ever seen anyone. One of the guys held out some keys, his hands were visibly shaking, and said something to the effect of his friend had given him the keys to his place, and said he could stay there while he was out of town. Turns out, the friend lived directly above me, and these guys went to the wrong floor. The floors were not numbered and neither were the condo units, by mistake. They didn't know they were at the wrong door, and that the keys were the same. I was able to get into his unit with my keys and they could open up my door with their keys. Needless to say, I was standing outside the hardware store the next day waiting for them to open, so I could buy a new lock for my door. Can't wait to hear their scariest encounter story. Like 20 of us college students went to a friend's girlfriend's parents' beach house on the 4th of July. We arrived at the specified address. She was running a little behind. We unloaded all of our bags, coolers full of beer, food in the fridge, cleaned our beds, kicked off our shoes, ya know. As I was preparing the grill, and friends got into the pool, someone noticed none of the family photos inside looked like our friend's girlfriend's family. About that time she called asking how far out we were because she was waiting. We got the address wrong and set up in someone else's house. The neighbors looked at us like we were crazy packing all of our it up so quickly. Looked like we were mob robbing the place. I was home alone after a dinner with my girlfriend. Around 3 AM I hear a very loud bang. My dog and I get out of bed to scope it out, hoping to find the reason for the noise. We searched for 15-20 minutes and could not find anything. We go back to bed, and not 10 minutes later, bang. This time I am shaking. It sounded like it was coming from the same spot. I spent the rest of night awake, not wanting to move. Found out the next day, girlfriend put 2 sparkling waters in the freezer to cool them down. just forgot about them, left the house and never told me about them. They exploded. That kept me up all night. That's terrifying and hilarious. Lived in a second floor apartment my junior year of college, and to save money, I opened my balcony doors and windows and kept my AC off. This particular week my 75-pound dog W, a terrifying Bart, was staying with my boyfriend, and I forgot to lock my door. Terrible coincidence. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night naked in my bed, to a man standing in my bedroom. Had no clue what to do. Couldn't jump up BC naked, so instinctively just said yo WTF. His response was, I came up to shut your doors and windows, at which point I noticed all were shut. Then he left and I locked my door. Cried. I was home alone with my toddler, getting ready for bed after putting her down for the night, when I heard her call for me. So I went to her room and she was fast asleep. Weird. Maybe she had woken up for a moment, and then passed out again. Got to the end of the hall before I heard her call for me in a panic. Rushed back in, and she was still asleep in the same position. Sat with her for a few minutes, and then made my way to bed when I heard my husband call my name. Must have come home from work early? So I go to him but he's not there. Call him, and confirm he's still at work and decide I must have heard a neighbor or something. Crawl into bed and hear my husband call for me again, and then continue talking as if he's having a conversation with someone. Then hear my child calling me again and rush into her room. Still asleep. This goes on for a while, until I decide I must really need some sleep and go back to bed with the lights on. Too freaked out to sleep, I was staring at a picture hanging on the wall when it disappeared. Like the wall just ate it? Look at another wall hanging and the same thing happens. They would reappear when I looked away and then be eaten by the wall again when I looked directly at them. Decide I'm officially an insane person and call husband to come home. Fall asleep eventually, and wake up and everything is normal, except my heart rate can't decide on a pace, swinging up and down between 30s 180s. Head into the hospital, and I'm having a hypertensive crisis. Turns out, it was a beta blockers I'd started recently. Nobody had heard of that reaction, so they kept me for a couple days until my numbers stabilized. No hallucinations after the first night, other than hearing dogs bark randomly for a couple days. Not good times. One of the first nights I was home alone with my brother. I was probably 13 or so. Parents went to a concert and left me in charge of my little brother. Just after he goes to bed, there's a banging at the door. I'm terrified. I stay quiet and sneak to the window. It was a neighbor from up the road. We weren't friends. He's never been in my house before. I'm wondering why the F he wants to come in now. I stood on the other side of the door and said, my parents aren't home. I can't open the door. Stupid, I know. Never let strangers know there are no adults around. He yells back, it's getting dark and I just wanted to let you know that your garage door is wide open. I felt like a schmuck, but I'm still alive. Not a schmuck, probably best possible thing to do, aside from closing it in the first place. You never know what someone's intentions are. Yep, I've actually done it myself. I noticed someone's shed in their backyard was on fire. I went and pounded on the door and was looking through the side window peering in, hoping someone was home. Sure enough, a lady comes around the corner and sees me staring through the window. Immediately stopped in her tracks. I just yelled at her at that point that her shed was on fire. She then opened the door, ran right past me to the backyard to grab the hose. She thanked me afterwards, but she told me that I scared out of her because she was a single lady home alone. I felt kinda bad, but kinda heroic too. So if I wanna lure someone out of their house, just light their shed on fire. Got it, thanks. You just solved a big problem in a novel I'm working on. I'll mention you in the credits. Yeah, sure, good luck with your novel, just don't mention me to the cops. 7-year-old me was playing with a doll I had got for my birthday in the doorway of my apartment on the 3rd floor of a 3-story building. My dad was outside in the parking lot, working on his car as he often did, and me playing in the hall was pretty common as I had a friend who lived directly across from me, who I was waiting to come home and play with. It was the 80s, so being unsupervised was more acceptable. Suddenly, this man I've never seen before walked up the stairs and approached me asking where my parents were. I told him my dad's outside in the parking lot and my mom's at work. I assumed he was a friend of my sister who was in her 20s, as he looked the same age. He said he couldn't just leave me alone and picked me up and threw me over his shoulder. I figured he was just overreacting and going to take me to my dad, but he made his way to the opposite door from the parking lot towards a side street where his car was. Just then, my dad turned the corner, as he just happened to have gone over to the other side to secretly smoke a joint, and asked the guy what was going on. The guy put me down and said something about thinking I needed help and took off. My dad, being stoned, didn't really react